Pennsylvania, now, what I've always done is bought property directly into the trust, and never put it into my own name. But there is a way you can take it from your own name and put it into the trust, and you have to show the state of Pennsylvania the documents, and it doesn't, the trust agreement that we use doesn't allow them to record the trust documents, but they need to see it, just a copy of it, just for their own records, to show like, okay, you know, the person that's transferring the property out of their name into the trust is the same person who will then own the trust. And as long as that person is not is tax exempt, which you would be because you're transferring it to yourself, then they'll forego the transfer tax. But
that's a no cost.
yeah, and there's actually clauses that I put into the trust that I developed myself to avoid having to pay the transfer tax, because there's a part of the Pennsylvania law says if any of the ownership interest in the trust can be transferred to a not taxable entity, they're gonna try to collect taxes from it. Now the upside of that is if they do collect taxes from you when it goes into the trust, you can transfer the ownership of that trust a million ways to Sunday and never pay transfer tax again, which is but you know, it only helps you if you're selling to another investor that understands it. If you're selling to a homeowner, they're gonna say, what do you mean trust? I just want to own my name.
Now, there's language out there called like piercing the veil and stuff like that. Does this also help?
It adds a veil. Yeah, like there's no liability protection. What the type of trust that we use do is they separate the equitable ownership from the legal ownership. So essentially, your trustee legally owns the property. You or whoever is the beneficiary of the trust owns the equity in that property, or owns the property from a financial capacity, but not from a legal capacity. So by separating that, it's pretty neat. And you know, you can do things like I've used a trustee. I've even named myself as a trustee, but I use an address that I have in South Dakota. Well, now, you know, somebody's got to track down, you know, first initial, last name out in South Dakota. You know, and at that point, it adds another barrier of entry. So, you know, thwarting all frivolous lawsuits is a good example. Last week, as of last week, I can tell you that I've never gotten a slip and fall letter before ever, but I got one last week. And it's to a trust, and that's it. He wrote a letter to trust. The guy's fishing. You know, we got an eviction going on for the tenant. So conveniently, as the person's getting evicted, they decide to slip and fall on the property. They go to some contingency attorney, and I got a letter drawn out to the trust saying, "Please turn this into your insurance company." See ya. You know, let's see what happens. You know, and this will be a good test because the trustee, they never even said the trustee's name in the document. So there's nothing official. Actually, they didn't give any official notice whatsoever at this point. Right. And we'll see what happens. But
if that property was owned in your name, you'd have a problem. You'd have a big problem. But what happens now is that if it was owned in your name, the lawyer's going to take that case, okay, with no money required because he knows he's going to get something. He can look right on public records just like we could. But because it's in a trust, if this lawyer wants to pursue this,
what else does this trust own?
Right. What else does this trust own? Well, this trust doesn't own anything else because we buy. Every house is in its own trust name. Okay. So what else happens is it's going to cost money now. It's going to take a lot more effort for this attorney, especially if you use an address in South Dakota. All right. It's going to be a pain in the ass to find out who owns this house. So what happens is he's asking this frivolous lawsuit. And the lawyer might go back and say, you know what, we're going to need $5,000 to pursue this further. And then the frivolous lawsuit person might say, you know what, I don't think I fell in front of this house. I think I fell in front of the house next to it.
Yeah,
right? They go for the low-hanging fruit.
Now, is when you say in their name, is even if it was under a separate LLC, you did a separate LLC for every property?
Yeah, sure. Now, you know, the downside to a separate LLC for every property is now you have to file with the state tax return for every property.
Yeah.
And even if you have a single member LLC, you know, let's say you have a master LLC and then sub LLC 1, sub LLC 2, and all those taxes get reported on the main return, Pennsylvania doesn't allow you to do that. They want they want an informational return of each of the LLCs as if it filed a federal return.
Oh, Pennsylvania, I'm sorry, yeah.
Not the IRS, I'm talking about Pennsylvania. So now you gotta file for Pennsylvania, and you have to submit a dummy IRS return to Pennsylvania as if you had to file. So now all of a sudden your accountant's bills just went up like crazy if you did one on every single property.
And you guys do this for every home or just the holds?
Everything.
Even if you flip them?
Everything.
Yeah, because then it's, you know, even if you, like if you.
For
look-
boats, for cars, for dogs, everything. You buy a dog, it might bite somebody, buy them in a trust.
Just to give you an example, I had a car that I put the car in the name of the trust name that I wanted didn't fit in the PennDOT's records, so I shorted it, and I'm like, well, what license plate number do you give me? I said, all right, HRC, whatever it was. Okay, I said, that's the name of the trust. She said, what do you mean that's the name of the trust? She's like, doesn't this trust already exist? It does right now. You know, you draw it up, fill out the name, and then I transferred that vehicle to Zach. So now Zach is the trustee on the vehicle, and the trustee's allowed to drive the vehicle, you know, as part of the trustee efforts. And then we never even changed the ownership on, so like the tags never changed, the title, they changed the trustee, but there's no transfer, right, of anything.
Registration still the same? just-
Registration completely stayed the same, the stickers stayed the same, the license plate stayed the same. Now, it just got a.
Name of trust.
Say, hey, I got fired as a trustee, Zach got hired as trustee. Then all of a
That
sudden,
changed. That changed.
Did you go to a car dealer?
yeah, we went to just the tags place.
Yeah.
And he's like,
No, I'm just saying the car dealer, they're gonna ask you for, if you're gonna buy a car off the lot,
yeah,
they're gonna ask you for your,
insurance, right?
and your credit check and all that kind of stuff, they're gonna give you a car.
Oh,
Get
this
a
is
loan.
Yeah.
Well, if you get a loan, if you're not getting a loan, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, is that, you know, a lot of the regulations around insurance, title insurance, all these things are only if you're dealing with institutions. When you start dealing with private people, all that stuff, you know, is negotiable because they can understand it. You explain it to somebody, like my private investor, not only does he, you know, the guy, not only does he like the fact that we're buying in trust, he also lends using trusts. Because if he was a lender on all the properties, all under the same name, everybody can look up what properties he's loaned on. So I said, why don't we just do this? Why don't we create a separate trust for each of the loans, and then you'll have a funding trust that matches up with the house trust, and it won't lend to anything else. So some neat things you can do. You can own all sorts of personal property. And,
I just bought that charity trust, right? I assigned the trust on my name.
yeah,
So now, when I'm gonna sell this
yeah.
trust, so how the capital gain will be working? How I'm gonna file the tax returns?
It's the same as if you bought it individually. There's no difference there. You still have a basis, and whatever the basis is, you know, whatever you sell it for minus your expenses, you still pay it the same.
It's more of a mitigation strategy than anything else.
Yeah.
It's smoke and mirrors, but it's
Right.
it's
I would
actually,
say-
it goes back to like, you know, Henry VIII. I mean, that's how much case law there is around it.
Great idea.
Well,
I
how
would
about a
say-
simple idea? How many people here have an LLC?
Yeah, several of us.
And let's say you spent $600 setting one up. Imagine if you bought 10 properties next year and you had to set up an LLC for each one and all the taxes associated with it. We'd easily spend, $600 per each one, where they're showing us a strategy that once you create this entity, it's set up and he can just go print it out without calling an attorney.
Photocopy film plans.
How much ag is involved with advertising a property and, so
Right.
Even if
it's
taxes
a
were,
technique that
if
some
taxes
people
were
like.
if taxes were the same and I saved $500 per LLC, I'd do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you like two last points, because,
I
you know,
spent $800.
Learn a class.
let me give you two last points about the trust. Back in the day when LLCs were becoming very popular, real estate investors were setting up an LLC for every property. And I remember lots of people had 10, 12, 15 of them, okay? Almost all of those people have then divested back into just one or two. So that strategy just doesn't work, okay? Sooner or later, it just bleeds you to death, all right? This is the strategy you want to use. And if you're somebody who owns some property in your name, don't make a big deal of it. You don't got to run around and go change the title of every house you own, unless you got something with a ton of equity in it that you want to protect. Don't worry about that, okay? Just worry. I know that you can. I know. I'm just saying it's, in most cases, if you got a $100,000 row home and you owe 82 grand on it, you don't need to go change it into a trust. Don't worry about it, okay? But the point is, learn this strategy and start using it from here forward, and one day you're gonna be very, very happy that you did. Because sooner or later, we live in a society where there, you know, is a gazillion attorneys, and they're just waiting for somebody to come by and say something about you. And the more successful you are in life, the more of a target you are, so protect yourself.
Even aside from attorneys, you just have like nosy neighbors, you know? So we teach things like how to not record the purchase price on a property so it never hits the public records, how to make sure your houses don't get published in the newspaper. You know, we do all that stuff too, just for privacy, you know? And, you know, it's good for estate planning too. You avoid probate. All your assets don't have to appear on a list of assets at the courthouse when you die. I mean, keeping them off of that list is a really good reason. That's probably one of the best reasons to do it. So I hope, you know, you've at least got a little bit of understanding of what the class is going to be about. And you guys, you know, it's $149. We just put it up on Meetup. I'd love to have you guys, and, you know, like Justin said, that for $149, you know, just to set up one LLC is going to cost you probably close to $1,000 with, you know, just even if you set up LLC on your own, you have to file with the state, which costs $100. Then you have to advertise it in 2 newspapers. I'm just saying, even if you did it on your own, they figured out how to roll your own. Every one is $100. Plus, you have to advertise it in 2 newspapers of general circulation, like a legal reporter and then a local newspaper. And just the filing, just those alone are going to cost you $50 a piece. So that's $200 just to do an LLC if you knew how to do it all by yourself. So that's just for an LLC. I'm not saying don't use an LLC, we still do, but we don't create multiple LLCs for this business, you know, unless there's a specific reason. If you're going to buy, like Phil's got an office building, well that you know, an office building deserves a separate entity. But if you're just buying a couple of single-family houses here and there, you don't have to set up an LLC for each and every one. And this is a way to kind of keep them somewhat segregated.
If you're gonna flip houses,
I do it for flips too, because
flip too.
yeah, you know, if somebody were, let's say you flip a house to somebody and they come back at you and say, you know what, you never disclosed that water came in the basement, blah blah blah, and
But you have a seller's disclosure.
there's a seller's disclosure, right? I'm saying, it's just saying, let's say they came back at you for something. If they go after an LLC, now your LLC is involved in a lawsuit on public records, versus, you know, they go and sue the trust who was the seller. Now that's on public records of the trust, but you never owned anything else in that trust. In fact, after that trust sold the property, it went out, there's no trust anymore, it's gone. So they might, you know, a good attorney could bring the LLC into it, but it's a lot, yeah, it's a pretty cool way at least to thwart off like that first level of just junk.
Talked about, you know, I had another company, it's an S corp with 6 different LLCs on there, just for it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want.
Just the administration.
Just administration.
The operating agreements.
You gotta keep the minutes up or your
I get
LLC's no
I get
good.
6 K1s a year, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, so I hope you guys come out to it. It's, you know, it's $149 and 32 cents.
I thought it was 129 for the people who showed up tonight here.
Yeah.
Okay, tonight.
We, yeah, if you guys want to sign up tonight, we can rope off the first 2 rows and have we could, you know, we charge like they charge at synagogue. The more you pay, the closer to the front you get.